Uh, All right, good Saturday morning. It's time for another episode of Hobby Hotline, number 339, to be exact. I don't know, where does the time go? That's just, it's crazy to think we're on 339. And happy to be joined by two guys. I didn't realize this. They haven't been on this show at the same time. So that's pretty cool. And to my right on the screen, Dr. James Beckett. And to his right, Mr. Samuel Evans, who's at the. Me and Dr. Jim are jealous because he's at the Chantilly show, and we're home. We're home here, but nonetheless, we're gonna chop up some hobby today, some topics. I think we'll start off, guys, with the news that you can buy something on eBay. And there's some parameters here I'll go over and send it, have it sent right from eBay to PSA to get graded. Obviously, the car, some parameters here. Obviously, the card has to be raw. You can't grade a graded card. It has to be over $250 in the sale because it's got to go through the eBay authenticity guarantee. When it passes that, then it will go to PSA for grading. It will be for $39.99, $40 for this service. Will be at their value level. So maybe 3 to 4 months before you have it in your hands. And obviously, there's no guarantee to the grade. And what you're going by is the scans because you're never actually going to have the card in your possession. I'll start with Dr. Jim. Obviously, they have a relationship with the vault being owned by the eBay vault and PSA. Dr. Jim, your thoughts, as someone that has obviously a grading background on this new venture between the two parties here.
Well, grading is very competitive, as everyone knows. But there are three things. PSA is making a lot of right moves. What they've done is they've tried to make it even more accessible, even easier, and safer, less changing hands. All those are good things because you can see they've done the GameStop thing. They're branched out internationally, so they're really focusing on those things. What I don't like about it, what I don't like about it are the two things. That it's not. Hey, Samuel, you made me to mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're not talking because we're gonna really understand the show because we're gonna hear
it. We will feel like we're there.
At any rate, the eBay thing, it's not that economical. Okay, it is safe, it's easy, it's accessible, but it's not that economical, and it's not very relational. And I think there's a huge opportunity. The bulk subbers kind of built PSA, the dealers. And so this is bypassing them. And those are the only two negatives, but it's inevitable that people want to work with eBay. And once it gets in the eBay system, they want to keep it there. And so PSA, this is a good move.
Whoop, you're muted still. There you go.
Yeah, I would agree with Dr. Beckett. I love the innovation piece. Whenever you could be innovative in a space like the hobby. And by the way, good morning, everyone. Coming to you live from the CSA show. You hear all the noise in the background. But I love the innovation piece. But I think something that Dr. Beckett spoke about that resonate with me is that personal experience. You know what I mean? And I think that is what the hobby is centered around. Those personal connections, those human moments. I call it human capital. I call it the human capital of the hobby, where we have this ongoing exchange. And I think PSA and eBay needs to figure that part out. How do we make it feel human? How do we incorporate that human element in it so people could have that extra reassurance about safety and less of changing hands, and give them some good thoughts while their card is going through the process. So I totally agree.
Couple comments here, guys. Stuke says, will they have a dedicated staff for eBay grading? I don't know the answer to that. I'm guessing it'll just be incorporated into the authenticators, the guys that the men and women who say the card's good and what it's advertised as being, and then it will be forward on to PSA. Good point by Abel in Vegas here. He says this is a tiered pricing system. So if you buy a card for $2,500, the grading fee will go up accordingly. So $40 is kind of like the baseline model, if you will. As someone who grades, guys, everything I've ever graded, I've had in my hand at one time or another. I've never graded blind, so to speak. I'll use that term where the card's not been in my hand. So I don't think this will be, I don't want to say 100%. I don't see myself using it, just not because I'm against it or it's terrible. It's just traditionally, like you said, Samuel and Dr. Jim, I've always had the card in hand to look at it to see, is it even worth having it graded and that sort of thing. So, I think it can be risky, right? Pictures only can tell so much. Obviously, having a card in person in your hand to see the true condition of it, is paramount. So I don't think I would do this. I know, Dr. Jim, obviously a lot of your slabs are picking, but would this be something, if you would this be something you could do that? Or like me, you have to have that card in hand?
Well, correction. All my slabs are PG.
Yeah. All right. I wasn't sure. I figured, but I didn't want to.
If you find a different one, then that would be shocking. But
let me ask you this: if this was Beckett, same deal, but Beckett instead of PSA, would you utilize it like that, or would you still say I really need to have that card in hand before I have them graded?
Here's the problem that PSA is going to have, and the reason, Samuel, your point is well taken about the human capital, but I don't think eBay's too big. So say I buy a card from Samuel on eBay, and I trust him and everything like that. But if it's a raw card and I'm paying big bucks, then I'm guessing that I'm going to want to have a side deal with Samuel to say, you know what, I'm sending this direct to collectors, to PSA, and if it comes back as 7, you got a deal. But if it comes back as a 6, I want a rebate, or I want to cancel, because you told me this was near mint or whatever it is, and I can't see it, but I want a third-party judgment. I think there could be some, and that's a relational element that's not going to be fun. And so side deals, because you're buying it sight unseen, and you might have some recourse. If, again, the authentication thing, I don't think they're going to be judging the condition in the authentication step. I think that's more, is this a real card? Is it counterfeit? They send it to PSA and they find a bad blemish on the back that knocks down the technical grade, then you've got a three-headed mess between eBay, PSA, 4 with the buyer and the seller. So that's the relational element that could go awry.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think they really need to get the right people at the table to sit down and like really triage that and think about like how do we work through these issues and these predictions that could possibly happen, because the hobby is built on relationships, so you don't want those relationships to sour because you're hoping for this high grade and it comes back and you're like, wait a minute, I paid all this money and I got this grade. The two aren't added up, so that's another great point.
I think, though, what a seller is going to do, Dr. Jim and Sam, will say, hey, you saw the picture. That's the same card, that is in the picture. But, technically, it's not like ComC where eBay has the card already. So that seller can put whatever pictures he wants on the eBay platform and then send, you hope this don't happen, but it could, right? Send a different card. And like you said, Dr. Jim, all the authentication service part of eBay is doing is just authenticating that the card is real, not trimmed or altered. They're not putting a grade on the card itself. So that's a great point. And then you got a dilemma, but it's like it'll be a he said, she said type of deal where you got a seller going after, a buyer going after seller saying, the seller's going to say, hey, that's the card I put pictures of. I don't know what else you saw them. You bought it. The seller might say,
or
no, that is, go ahead.
Or I think what eBay could mandate is that if you are possibly if any of your product is possibly labeled or set up for direct to PSA, you got to send it to us and we hold it, and you continue to post it online. And if somebody buy it, we already have it in our possession, and we can give that buyer that seller some upfront information about this card if they want to do direct to PSA. So like you're front loading them with information so that way they can make an informed decision and say, all right, here's a possible outcome for this card. I really love this card. I'm not trying to make money on it, but I want it in my PC. I'll take that risk. So any information helps, to allow someone to make an informed decision, especially when you're dealing with a lot of money.
Dr. Jim, what are your thoughts on, maybe someone pulling a switcheroo, or even without a switcheroo, people just say the pictures didn't illustrate that. Like, I didn't see that on your scans, and if I would have saw that, I probably wouldn't have made this purchase. So I want to reverse this transaction. I mean, this could open up. I mean, that happens under normal circumstances without the grading aspect thrown in. But kind of your thoughts there.
You're asking me to think like a criminal.
Well, listen, we all have that small part of us.
Any system can be beaten if you really, really want to. But what Samuel's saying about the relational capital, to me, part of that is dealing with people that you know and like. You know them. You're friends with them, like at a card show. You're dealing with a person. You see a face. You can shake hands. You observe them in business. eBay, a little bit blind, and you can't just say, hey, they got a lot of good feedback. You just don't know, and honest mistakes can be made. So that's why card shows are cool, and dealing with people that you know.
Yeah, for sure. A comment here I want to get. Stuke says, hey, probably a good idea to send the card directly to PSA. I've had a card damaged by the eBay authentication process. So he said a card he's bought that went to eBay authentication was damaged. And it can happen, right? People drop things. I've dropped my own stuff and dinged a corner. Not a fun moment, but it happens. And so there's no guarantees that can't happen. All they're trying to do is guarantee that the card is legit in the real McCoy. If someone does that, other than having the before and after pictures, it would be, and then again, it becomes a he said, she said. The eBay probably could say, how do we know you didn't? Well, it's going to be graded, but they're going to say, they didn't do it. You know what I mean? And the buyer's going to say, well, I didn't do it because I never touched the card. So who did it? And,
who wants to put expensive raw cards? I don't know that we're mainly talking vintage, but vintage cards that are not graded and are expensive are suspect.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. That's why I would never probably use this, because it's just too many question marks and things that pratfalls and stuff. For me, as someone who grades, I always have the cards in hand, and as a bulk subber, have other people's cards in hand too. And so it's something you said earlier too, Dr. Jim, is, are you going to get these deals hinged on the grade? Like, hey, I'll give you an extra so and so if this thing gets a set. Like, I'm buying it, but if it grades high, I'll throw you. And how would you do that on the eBay platform? It almost would have to be like a verbal promise. You could, once you get the card back, you could say, No, I didn't say that, or I'm not doing that. So, no,
Yeah,
it almost would have to be baked into the system.
yeah. Like I said, eBay and PSA should like sit down and make sure they have the right people at the table and come up with like some guidelines and bylaws to this process to ensure, because like at the end of the day, collecting is a business, and we can't be naive and ignore that, right? Yes, we all are passionate collectors, but like people are investing their hard-earned money into building their collection, and some people are like not like me. I don't really care about a numeric grade. I just love the card. But there are some people who care about that numeric grade, and I think if this is a prediction that we can make right now, the three of us, they need to have the right people at the table thinking about this and creating some bylaws and guidelines so people can make informed decisions and bring the sellers to the table and like, is this something you're willing to agree to?
Yeah, a couple comments here. Rex says that's part of the problem with letting eBay PSA handle the whole thing. You just have no idea who's handling your cards. We've already seen dozens of missing cards submitted to PSA to GameStop. If you ask me, some of the stories I've heard with the GameStop entity and that have been nightmare scenarios with cards being switched or different cards in return. So that thing, I would not, I would never entertain even that. Ruben thinks we're going to have a future where this won't be a problem because all cards will come out graded out of a pack, and there are products where cards are graded in the pack. I don't know if we'll, it'll never be 100%. I wouldn't want that, right? It's not traditionally how it goes. So, good morning, Warren. I'm trying to put up the good morning, Dan Ryan from Syracuse, right there. Uh, he asked, I would love to hear Dr. Jim's thoughts on how businesses in the hobby react during periods of high economic anxiety, as we witnessed this week, or how it impacts collectors' point of view.
Well, I can answer that question right now, and not to cut you off, Dr. Beckett. I'm at the CSA show, and this show is busy. There are a lot of people here. I was here yesterday, Friday night, towards the tail end when I drove in from the Philly area, and there were still people here with like 90 minutes to spare. And then arriving here this morning to see the line outside and down the pathway. The hobby's in a healthy space and place, and and I think the vendors here are pricing their cards very well, where they can target those different markets of people who want to buy high-end cards or people who want to buy the more low-end cards, because I see people and looking through the dollar bins and the half-off bins, and I see people looking at the high-end showcases. So doesn't look pretty scary to me from my point of view. But everybody has their space and place.
Well, let's segue with that question, guys. Let's move into this topic, right? We know what's going on in the economy with tariffs.
Wait, can I address Dan's question?
Yeah. Let me put it back up too.
Yeah.
That way we can.
That was a thoughtful question. He's a thoughtful guy. Yeah, basically, the way I break it down is full-time businesses versus part-time business. Any full-time business is nervous now. Part-time business are laughing all the way to the bank. They say, great. When the stock market's up, people have money. When the stock market's down, they spend money on cards and stuff because the stock market stinks. So if you're a side gig person, that's Samuel. I think that's why the shows are real big now, because people are thinking, hey, at least I can go flip some cards, trade some cards, buy some cards, sell some cards. But if you're a full-time business, those are the ones that are more impacted by the tariffs and the economy and this general malaise in the economy. But the side gig business gets hot when other things are bad. And so the Dallas show, same thing, Samuel. It's just, last show was one of the best ever. And the next one might be even better. Anyway, sorry, that was my response to Dan.
Yeah, and Dan's local to me. I see him at the local shows here. Good guy, and I'll even forgive him for being a Packers fan. That being said, but what I've been getting a lot of emails. I'm sure you guys have too, from different hobby entities, kind of addressing the tariffs. A few of those have basically come out and said until anything's reversed, their prices will go up on products, unfortunately. So, I have hobby effect question mark. It really is no question. Prices are going up on some of these entities' offerings. They've already announced that and sent emails and made statements. Um, we talked about the show is not shows are not slowing down. It's that is strong. I don't think that's going to change because of tariffs. Well, what about these companies? And you did say it, Dr. Jim, that these full time companies are going to maybe take a direct hit with these tariffs and the policies that come with them. I mean, how big of a hit might this be? And then obviously, a lot of it's supplies, and so if you got to buy supplies, maybe they cost more. Like we kind of saw that during COVID when soft sleeves went from $1 a pack to like $3, $4, $5 a pack, and that's just one item as an example. But kind of your thoughts here on the full time companies, guys, and how do they, survive until these either go away or get rescinded?
Or moderated.
Yeah, I mean, what? And Dr. Jim, have you ever? I don't remember. I know tariffs are not a new thing, but they're not always common, and maybe to the percentages we're seeing. Do you think this is maybe a little overblown or not necessarily?
It's presidential jousting, with other nations, and there'll be a resolution, but the resolution probably will be not going back to the way it was. There'll be some level of tariffs that Trump is claiming they're reciprocal and all that. But like I say, I just think one of the pivotal points in our hobby was when the prices went way up. In fact, several times when prices have gone up, it's not bad for the hobby. In '89, Upper Deck came in and it was, people say, I can't believe it. They're going to be $1 a pack or 89 cents a pack. But did the industry grow through that? Yeah. When prices go up and even costs go up, that's not a problem. The 03-04 basketball Upper Deck exquisite, that was unprecedented. Higher prices are not necessarily bad news in the hobby. Higher costs even because it's a hobby. Ultimately, people want the cards. And, so many of these products are going above SRP anyway. So if the SRP goes up, maybe that means there's not as much run up beyond that. I just think the ecosystem finds a way to look for the inefficiencies and the opportunities there. And it's so diverse. So I won't say it's much ado about nothing, because I think some of these tariffs are really pretty significant. But when it all gets done, we're going to be working with Canada for sure. And China may be another story, but China's not the only part of Asia. You got Japan, which is a huge hotbed. The Europeans, PSA, BGS, UK, all those things. I think those things are going to get worked out. But it may be a kind of a difficult time here for the next weeks or months, which is just, again, wreaking havoc with the stock market, which further makes people nervous. But it's got to be resolved, and I think it will be.
Sammy, go ahead.
I'm no expert. I'm not the expert in this, but I think in times like this, other markets come into play, and people find ways to get their fix and buy cards, whether it's singles, whether it's packs, or whether it's boxes. So, the hobby has always found a way to reinvent itself. Even when the bubble burst during the junk wax era, and next thing you know, we all at home at COVID, and now cards are the new mainstream again. So, we'll get through it.
A couple comments, guys. Vintage card collector says, impossible to measure, but economic turbulence has some impact on people's buying decisions. Sure, anytime you look at your 401k statement when it comes in, or your IRAs, and you see that number maybe go down from the previous one you received, it can be scary and impact obviously how much money you spend, especially if you think it's going to be a long-term downtrend, right? Dan thanks you, Dr. Beckett, for your answer, and says feels like a time to be opportunistic for a little guy like me. Rex, who operates 2 stores, so we'll get him his take here on the ground level. BCW said they will be raising prices on supplies. Yes, I'm an affiliate of theirs, and I got all that info as well. No surprise there. Japanese Pokemon cards will also be less of a bargain than they have been. Cooter says the impact of tariffs haven't hit yet. Trillions of dollars of disposable income has been put in jeopardy. To think that tariffs won't negatively impact the hobby is just wrong. Short the hobby. So Cooters are a little bit more sky is falling, right? I mean, the hobby's still going to survive, but he thinks maybe a little bit more of a hit than we might be thinking. And that's, we're going to find that out. Another comment, Ryan McClanahan. I don't think that card companies take a tariff hit like they did in the 30s. That was different. And the card manufacturers took a larger hit when the 16th Amendment was implemented in 1913. So a little bit of history. Cooter says, Dr. Jim, you're giving too much credit for people being rational.
No, he's not my guy, Cooter. He's not my guy.
Dr. Jim, voice of reason for America. Listen, maybe this is the start of Dr. James Beckett for president. It all started today. I would. You got my vote at this point. So Gordon Pang says, but respectfully, higher prices discourage people from buying more. There are a lot of
not necessarily. It wasn't higher prices that made people leave. They left because the prices were too low because of junk wax. It's counter instinctual. High prices bring people in, low prices send them away. These cards aren't worth anything. Now they're worth even more. Now, again, you're just used to paying X, and now you're going to pay 110% of X, and you've had choice to either do it or not do it. And again, there's no tariff on the cards you're holding in your hand.
That's correct.
You already have. The hobby is, I don't know if it's 90% what is already existing. It's probably
circulation.
More.
Probably 90% straw sales.
At Chantilly, how many cards there? What percentage is the last year or two?
Yeah,
it's 10% maybe.
No, it's true. Again, a lot of stuff's already in circulation, right? So that's already here. It doesn't have to be necessarily shipped internationally and that sort of thing. And like Samuel made a great point, right? People figure out a way if they really want to. Let me preface it by saying that if people really want to stay active in the hobby, they find a way. There's different ways to hobby. I've said it a million times to Sunday on my content. There's ways to hobby, whether it be dollar boxes, low grade vintage rather than high. There's just whatever aspect you're in. There's ways to stay active and just kind of adapt no matter what the economic situation. We got one of our hobby hotline alums doing a cameo. Hi, Alex. I'm assuming you can hear us. So, man, now I'm really jealous.
Yeah. So when I was doing this, Alex said he was going to photobomb. So there we have it. We got 4 people on today.
Yep. A couple more comments, and then we'll kind of move on. Rex again says we placed a decent size supply order through Fanatics. Their prices haven't changed yet, but all that stuff comes from China, so I anticipate that they will. TJ says hello. Better late than never. Pepino Man says, as a collector, I disagree with lower prices driving people away. So Pepino Man says, Dr. Jim, I respectfully disagree. I get if you're someone that's just in it for the dollar sign, yeah, I'm sure that the lower prices are deflating to you. Or I'm not full time, but I set up at shows, guys. I do about 2 a month. It is what it is. I just have to adapt, right? Whatever the price is, you have a choice. You adapt and do okay, hopefully, or well, or you don't adapt and you don't do well, and then that experience isn't fun anymore, and you probably wind up not doing it. So, Victor,
I think.
go ahead, Samuel.
So I have a unique perspective to like what you just said. Like as a kid growing up in North Philly, right? Our 5 to 10 block radius, I had a lot of collectors in my neighborhood. And our experience wasn't like my experience is today in the hobby, like going to shows, hobby stores, the Beckett book, like all those things that like cultivate your experience and your exploration of collecting. It was just us, and we made it our thing. And like we knew about like, oh, these cards are worth something, but we didn't have that like knowledge and understanding of it. But we also understood like when the time came and we heard the news that like cards wasn't worth anything, a lot of people like left the space for like multiple reasons, like you lose interest or like they don't have any value. Like I still remember at 13 packing up my box of cards and throwing them in the trash and feeling like heartbroken that I'm leaving the hobby, and I was like, one day I'll come back. But I just think the perspective is different on like why people left in the 90s. I think it has something to do with the value aspect, the low value of it. And I also think it has a lot to do with people's experience or the lack thereof. So there's multiple ways you can look at it. It's not one specific issue.
Yeah, a couple more last comments. Victor says he feels it's going to be the biggest hit will be on supplies, since a lot of it comes from overseas and in China specifically. I agree with that, but we'll see if it. A question I don't know the answer to this question, guys. Fanatics may manufacture cards in the U.S., but where is the paper being resourced from? I don't specifically know. I don't know if either Dr. Jim, Samuel, I don't know if you're familiar with where
a lot of paper comes from Canada.
Okay. All right. So there's some tariff potential. I know they're one of the countries getting hit. Gordon Pang says it depends on how long this nonsense lasts. For most of us, after all, cards are about disposable income. I'm going to be spending less if it's going to be a while. So yeah, I mean this stuff, impacts people, right? Here's another one. When the cost of necessities goes up, money available for the hobby goes down. From Cooter. Word says COVID really had an explosion effect on the hobby, watching vintage slowly come back down as expected. And I like it because as a vintage guy, I've been able to buy some stuff at a little less prices. So, like Dr. Jim said, lower prices, I like it, especially when I'm buying stuff. Maybe not, I know dealers who maybe do it more full time than even I do don't always like lower prices when it comes to selling. But I won't comply. So, or complain. Mike Petty says, I buy when people are afraid. Go ahead, Dr. Jim.
Yeah, it's not all about disposable income. Cards are currency. So if times are bad, it's like, oh, I don't have any money to buy cards. Well, wait a minute. I got a bunch of cards I can sell. I can trade. I can do lots of things. In fact, some of the cards that you would sell are instant money if you've got the right stuff. So it's not about, hey, I just keep buying and buying and buying and I never sell. Those kind of people, if they never sell and they just keep buying, now if they're buying individual cards, they have some sense of purpose. But if they're buying into breaks, buying unopened wax, they're going to have to sell some stuff. But again, that's part of what's happening at Chantilly. It's not just people coming in with wallets and I want to spend some money. No, they're bringing in cards to trade, cards to sell. It's a whole ecosystem, and there's probably more selling going on and more willingness to sell when times are uncertain.
Yeah, I was talking to some dealers. There are a lot of people who are like coming in to sell cards, and dealers are buying cards, and then vice versa. Like I tend to, when I come to shows, I tend to walk the room and just listen to the sounds and watch the sights. And you see a lot of that exchange, trade value, cash value, like all those different things. And there's no like fear of like, oh, I'm not buying right now. Even when I was at White Plains for just one day, walking around, making hobby content, you saw a lot of people in there selling their cards and a lot of dealers buying cards and then vice versa. So there's avenues for like everything.
Yeah, no doubt. A few more comments, guys, and then we'll go to the next subject. Jeff reminds us that cards have some plastic and metal components as well in them, as not just paper. TJ, echoing kind of what Dr. Jim said with vintage, right? Tariffs hopefully won't impact me with vintage. Anyway, vintage prices still need some correcting towards pre-COVID levels. Pepino Man says price hikes don't stop me from collecting, just the way I spend my money. That's right. You can still be active without even transacting. You can make trades. You can do a lot of things without even taking out your wallet. So Abel says, with the stock market, could that lead to certain people parking money in cards? I think that happens now. Again, we talked about this. Cards are a commodity. Whether you do it for that reason, that's on you or up to you. But cards are a commodity, and like Dr. Jim said, some of these cards, and I own some. We all own some that are very liquid, right? If we needed some money, we could sell the cards rather quickly, and that sort of thing. That's just the way it is. So, Mike Petty put. Go ahead, Samuel.
Well, let me just say 90+% of the hobby, is commodity. But the 10% of cards that are not a commodity, that are really hard to find, that are on the floor of Chantilly right now, many of them, that's like I said, sometimes that's better than cash. Commodity cards are not bad because when times are good, there's a lot of liquidity, a lot of people are interested, and there's a lot of action there. But the junk wax era is the commodities were recognized as being unsustainable. Too many out there, and then the price dropped. And like Samuel said, when people went around in those days saying, "Hey, will you buy my cards?" They said no. No, we're not buying your 92 Fleer or something. You're just and so the lack of liquidity, and so we don't have that now. The commodities are much lower than they used to be, but they're higher than a long time ago. So again, the ebb and flow, John, is healthy, and there have to be some cards that are commodities that are available to kids and people with less money, and there's always going to be the high end that's infrequently driving the headlines.
And no doubt,
those are going strong.
And even to your point, Dr. Beckett, like the past couple of shows I've been to, like, yes, you see vintage being sold, traded, bought back and forth, but you also see a lot of like 90s stuff and a lot of like inserts from the 90s, and like people are buying those rare insert cards from the 90s, and some like cool base cards of like Hall of Fame players. So like, even though like a lot of those cards are junk wax cards, but you still see that resurgence and that urge to like, I want this very rare insert card of Michael Jordan or Shaquille O'Neal, like Hall of Famers and superstars.
Yep.
Yeah, real quick, this is from Dan. He's basically asking about fractional share companies, whether they exist anymore. They do. I mean, Collectible doesn't. I believe Alt is still functioning, but I don't think. But a lot of those fractional share companies, guys, as you well know, they do cards, but they do other things. They're doing, liquor, purses, handbags, cars, and so they're spread out across. They've diversified the portfolio that they're offering fractional shares. Collectible, which was strong on just cards and memorabilia, doesn't exist anymore. They've kind of dissolved. So there's the answer to that. Fractionals will always be a thing in some form or fashion, but I don't think card wise. I don't think it's what it once was. I think that's kind of goes without saying. Guys, I was shocked at how big of a people were really moved by this meter and interested in it. And I get it. I mean, it is real life with finances and stuff like that. So maybe I shouldn't be as surprised by the activity in the chat room. We'll kind of go to our next topic, guys, and that's players active and retired, buying into or becoming owners of LCSs. We got this is not new news. Tom Brady's bought into the Card Store Card Vault, but they're expanding their reach with new locations, including, I believe, next week they'll be opening right near MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. He will be on hand for that grand opening. J.J. Hoover, former Cincinnati Reds pitcher, just opened up his store near Cincinnati in Alexandria, Kentucky. We're seeing a lot of players get involved directly, either with card stores or hobby entities. Is this good or bad for the hobby? I don't think it's bad, but
I believe. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I believe it's. I think the thing that drove this was the whole equity share when Fanatics came in and took the license for a lot of things. And when I was reading my first article about that, and I saw that fine line that athletes are getting the equity share in this, the equity piece is cool, and it's also a double down investment on themselves. And why not get into a space and place where you can benefit and make money and get a piece of the pie, but also learn the business and get a profitable store and add that to your portfolio. And if you have a recognized name and people want to come to your store, it only doubles the value.
Comment here from Pepino, Dr. Jim and Sammy. Not sure if the athletes are in it for the love of the hobby or the income. Why not both? Right? Maybe they do love the hobby and some of the money that can be made. Listen. I'll say that I'm not Tom Brady by any stretch of the imagination, but I love the hobby. I got in as a 7-year-old when I could care less what the cards were worth. I just was collecting certain guys, teams, and now years later, nothing's changed other than the fact I do 2 card shows a month as a seller, right? I like selling cards too, because where does that money I make selling cards, where does most of it go? Back in the hobby buying more cards, right? So I don't think that's terrible. If they're just in it for the money, that would probably bother me a little bit more. But that's their business too. They can say, I don't care if it bothers you, John.
I would say this. Having the privilege to work a lot of card shows and come to card shows and be behind the scenes and talk with a lot of athletes. You learn so much about them as a person. And there are a lot of them who have these hobbies themselves. Some of them may be cards, some of them may be Legos, they have their own little things. And there are a lot of athletes in this space who play professional sports who love collecting cards. And I think for many of them, it becomes a form of therapy. It becomes a pastime for them, where the pressures of being an athlete and making big time shots or catching big time passes, throwing big time passes. This is the one place where, like, yes, there are a lot of people who recognize me, but it's also a space and place where I get to be myself and I get to partake in some joy and some nostalgia. And a lot of them have backgrounds of collecting cards as kids. So, you know, having that lens and seeing them, that human side of them, and not like, oh, I'm the big time athlete, it's pretty cool when you learn their stories. So I think it's a little bit of both. But if I had to say which one I would lean towards, I would lean towards the more like passion side that they love to collect. You know, especially when you learn stories about, like, you know, some NBA players who are like these foremost like Lego builders, and they have a ton of like Lego sets in their homes, and that's what they do for their therapy and decompress. So I think it's passion too.
Yeah, and in Tom Brady's case, listen, he doesn't need to invest in Card Vault because he needs another payday. And now he's doing broadcasting that pays him, I don't know how many millions. It's a lot, right? So then he's got to have a little, like, he's showing up to events, right? It's not like he's just a silent partner, or where hey, you can use my name, but I won't be there. Just say Tom Brady's involved. Like, he's showing up to these events. It's got to be cool for people who attend these events to get to meet him, shake his hand, and kind of be in the same room with him, whether you like him or not. As a Steeler fan, I have a little bit of distaste for him, but that's just because we have a couple less Lombardis because of that guy. But you can't argue with the greatness that he is. Tony doesn't think this will end well. He says Tom Brady knows as much about cards in this hobby as Michael Rubin. This probably won't end well. I don't know about that. We'll see. Stuke says, "Hey, I've gotten the former NHL and WHA goalie Joe Daly store in Winnipeg for 30 years." And there's a former hockey player who's owned a store for 30 years, right? I think that if you do something for 30 years, there's passion there. Whether it's financial or not, you do anything for 30 years, there's some passion there. So, Dr. Jim, we haven't heard from you on athletes owning entities and card stores.
The key is not owning, the key is managing. So if they're owning and it's a passive ownership where you show up every once in a while, that you're not in that business, you're just a part owner. And Tom Brady, I'm not sure he invested money. And they have to say, look, we're going to give you 50% of this business because we think you're going to double it overnight because of the power of your name, and you're going to be required, or part of the deal is you've got to come once a month to the whatever. But he's not going to be actively managing the business. Therefore, he doesn't really have to know that much about the business other than be himself. And I hope it works out great. Having a hobby shop is hard. You've done it, John. I know. I've done it. It's not easy, especially if you're selling singles. Selling wax, not a big deal. Selling singles, sorting cards, getting things ready for the customers is difficult. So most of the new stores that I see, like the Card Vault, is heavy on the unopened and appearances and things like that. Probably breaks, a digital component and all that stuff. So I hope it works. And it needs to work financially, not just and it probably will. It probably will. But JJ Hoover is more the person to look at of somebody that's probably going to be actively in the store a lot. Now, if that happens a lot, again, that's great. That's validation.
Yep.
Cassius March, I'll mention him, former Steeler linebacker. He owns a card store. He's big into Pokemon, so that's his main alley. But he has sports cards there as well. And it's a great point you made, Dr. Jim. Right? There's a difference from a store owner who unlocks the door every morning, comes in and runs the store, than someone that sort of attaches their name on it, like Tom Brady. No doubt. Like you said, as a former LCS owner for 7 years, which was a lot of fun. but we didn't have any silent part. Tom Brady wasn't a thing yet, but we didn't have an athlete that would just put his name on it. Probably wouldn't have done that anyway. So that's a great point. That being there every day, making sure everything that needs to happen happens, paying the bills, ordering the right stuff. Brady's not doing that with Cardwell. He's pretty much it's almost like an NIL deal, right? Name, image, and likeness. He's kind of saying you can use my name, my likeness, and I'll be here maybe once a month or whatever the agreed upon deal is. So I don't think it's necessarily bad, but maybe I think we should probably give more credit to the former athletes who are in the trenches, if you will, getting it done. So a couple comments here. I see Rex again. He's a current dual store owner. He says, curious to see how these shops being open near ballparks and stadiums do. So many people talk about converting sports fans to collectors, but I think that potential might be overblown. It's a great point. I have a lot of sports buddies who don't collect cards like I do. They may ask me some stuff. They have a little bit of curiosity, but they don't really collect. I'm the opposite. So I got into cards as a young kid because I was a sports kid, and then I found out about the cards, and I just made that transition. I don't know if that happens, guys, like it used to. I'm sure it does for some, but maybe not at the same rate. So it's a good point by Rex, right? Just putting a card store next to a major league ballpark or football stadium or whatever kind of stadium arena, does that automatically equal success? Probably not, but it's probably not a bad thing to be in that area too, right? So I guess we'll see.
I think for that, I think it also depends on how active that stadium is. If you're a stadium that's only playing 25 games or 35 games a year, how much is that store going to be open? Now, if you're a stadium that's super active, there's a lot of concerts, there's a lot of events going on. If it's downtown, in the downtown area, like in Philadelphia, where our stadiums are, it's not in downtown Philadelphia. It's more in an area where it's surrounded by a community, but it's not something like people will frequent every day unless there was like a major sporting event going on. Now, they do have a casino down there, so that's more foot traffic. But I think it all depends on what's happening in the surrounding area and where the stadium is located in proximity to like people, where foot traffic is going to constantly come every day.
Yeah, that's another great point, right? Is you got sort of a captive audience when you're near. Now that don't mean your captive audience is going to spend money in your store, but maybe someone comes in and they're not a collector, but their nephew is, their son who's not there, or somebody. You might get a sale like that. So we got to keep that aspect in mind. A couple comments here. Tony says, to Stooks, Scott, wish more athletes like Daly own stores. We're starting to see a little bit more of that, Tony. We got a DC3. My motto is let fun be your profit. If you're always worried about making money, I don't think it will be that fun. Me and Dr. Jim have done shows with like, what do we do with the collection as we get older? Like, what's the end goal? I think Pepino Man's figured it out, Dr. Jim. He says, I've never sold a card, but getting closer to retirement when I plan to start setting up at shows and selling off my collection as a means for income while still enjoying the hobby any way I can. So Pepino Man says, hey, I'm not taking it with me. I'm going to phase it out after retirement and use that income for whatever he deems appropriate. So good point here. I kind of agree with this from Tony. Says Tom Brady is making their rounds only to help the Fanatics IPO, which he's in part bought into that as well. So kind of bumping up the stock, if you will. Warren says, hey, I'm going to do the same thing, Pepino. Warren in Cleveland says, I'm going to sell. And that's something we've talked about, Dr. Jim, like what happens to all this stuff behind us here and, as we get older. So Those two guys have it figured out. Maybe that's what I have to do. I don't know. Some stuff will obviously go to my son Jordan.
I'll give it to my children. If they love it,
there you go.
They keep it. They want to sell it, they can sell it.
There you go. Any on this topic? Any closing thoughts, Dr. Jim?
Well, again, you were a store owner and probably manager too, and I was probably a co-manager at best in the very early days. But rent is a big portion of the expenses, because the labor, if you're the manager, you're kind of drawing from that, but your rent is a big expense, and it's way more if you're in proximity to the stadium or a lot of foot traffic.
Oh, yeah.
And as Rick said, I don't think foot traffic, you want the right kind of foot traffic. Yeah, they're sports fans, but yes, I think they're going to see that they need to try and get greater visibility for the hobby, but it's not a recipe for success necessarily to jack up your rent. And then the other thing I was going to say, John, did you have any silent partners when you had your store where you had to give them half your profits when you did all the work?
No, I'd be out. I wouldn't have lasted 7 years.
Yeah, so I'm just saying it's tricky, but it's worth giving it a try, and I hope it works. I hope it works.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll close out on a high note here for sure, right? With Samuel's at the Chantilly show, as we know. I've never been there. It's a show that me and some of the guys I set up with here in the show circuit in Central New York have discussed maybe potentially someday setting up there and making the trip. I don't even have a problem. Like I wouldn't mind even going just as a consumer. I'll start with Dr. Jim. Have you ever attended Chantilly, Dr. Jim?
Long time ago, when it was Collector Showcase and Marco Roll, and back 30 years ago, probably.
Well, Samuel, you're live.
Those are the main ones I did. I did a lot of the Philly shows. Chantilly was very similar. Did that occasionally.
I mean, so I first experienced Chantilly a year ago, and when I walked in, I was just like, man, this is a great show, and it's definitely one of the shows. It's definitely like one of my top 5 shows I've been to. Like, I'm not going to include the National on that list because that's just a whole totally different experience. But talking about like smaller regional shows, like real football heavy, they have their moments where they bring in good basketball athletes and baseball athletes. But the one thing that stood out to me was like just a diverse crowd of people that I saw like walking up. And you see people from all walks of life just experiencing the show. And the vendors are amazing, very welcoming. I walked past a couple of tables on Friday night, and there was a few people who remember me from last year. And we just started chatting like it was just like yesterday. So it's an amazing show. There's a lot of people here. They got a lot of great athletes here. You got Lawrence Teller here. You got the list of who's who from Emmitt Smith. Kyle Ripken is here as well, Kyle Ripken Jr. So it's a great show. And I tell anybody, if you live in the DMV area or if you live in the Philly area and you're looking for another regional show to go to outside or within your area, check out the CSA show. And I'm not just saying that because I'm doing media for them. I'm saying it because I come here as a collector as well. And it's just a great experience to see, feel, and touch, so try it.
I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Sam. Do you know how many tables are there, approximately, rough estimate?
It's over 200, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good size.
It's a good question. Hold on, I got the answer.
I bet it's more.
Okay.
It's definitely more. It says 200 plus dealers and booths, so it's got to be more. It's got to be more. There's a lot of tables.
Well, that's 200 dealers, but so some dealers have 3, 4, 5, even 6 tables. So it's definitely probably closer to 1,000 than
Yeah.
table wise.
I don't know the raw number, but I can find out, and I'll shoot you a text.
All right.
But there are a lot of dealers here. A lot of the dealers here, they do the national. A lot of the dealers here do the Philly show. So it's like this very like incestual community where everyone comes together, and you see a lot of them at the same shows.
It's I always say the hobby's a fraternity, right? So this is just
Yes.
another meeting to get together, and it's I got to get down there. It's something that's on the card.
Danny
bucket
Black
list.
is here today.
All right, tell
ran
him I
into
said
Danny.
hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no,
Yep.
it's a good vibe. Like it's a real good vibe. And last year when I was here, I got the opportunity to sit down with some of the Sandlot guys, and we just had like these organic conversations back at the hotel, behind the curtain, and just like hanging out. And a lot of the athletes are super cool, especially when you're back at the hotel and they're sitting in the lobby area, and they just strike up these conversations. Like last night, we came back from eating dinner, and Emmitt Smith is just, I mean, he's sitting down there with his handler, but he's sitting around the table with a bunch of regular people, and they're all playing cards and just talking about sports, and he's sharing all his stories from the past. So it's a vibe. It's a vibrant community, and it's a show that if you want to get some good stories, come to as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
Show. His parents had a card show. Emmitt, back in the day, Emmitt had his own card show with his family.
That's cool. Yeah, there you go. So even then, right? It's the kind of athletes in the hobbies, not necessarily new. I just think we're seeing more of it even nowadays. So, well, Samuel, enjoy the show. Don't work too hard. Make some fun in there as well. And glad to share an hour with you, a little over an hour with you this morning. And Dr. Jim, always a pleasure. I think it's been a while even before since we've done it. So I know we've done plenty of them, but it's been a bit. So thank you everyone in the chat room. Very busy.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Beckett, it was a pleasure meeting you virtually. John, I know we always hang out. No, it's definitely a pleasure meeting you virtually, Dr. Beckett, and hearing your wealth of knowledge. I'm an educator by day, so to sit in this virtual space and just hear the depth of knowledge, the breadth of knowledge was amazing for me and my growth as a collector and even a person. So just wanted to give you your flowers and say I appreciate it.
Well, look forward to seeing you at the National.
Yes.
Thank you to everybody in chat room. Very active, very insightful. And even if you're not in the chat room and you're listening to this after the fact on a podcast download, we appreciate you as well. You're giving your time to us as well. So whatever the case may be, thanks everybody out there as well. So we'll be back here next week, and we'll see you. We'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.